Hey scaredy cats, hit subscribe and comment your spookiest story below. Let's dive into today's terrifying tale. Duke. The day the sky turned against us started like any other winter day in the suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek. Emily Dalton, a seasoned nurse at the local hospital, was enjoying her day off, curled up with a cup of hot cocoa by the living room window. The weather forecast hadn't predicted more than a light dusting of snow. Yet as she peered out, the flakes began to fall with an unusual urgency. Willow Creek, nestled between sprawling urban developments and rural expanses, was known for its tranquil streets and close-knit community. But as the snow piled up, swallowing the landscape in a thick, white blanket, a palpable sense of unease settled over Emily. It wasn't just the intensity of the snowfall. There was something eerily precise about the way the snow seemed to encircle the neighborhood. By afternoon, the world outside Emily's window had transformed into a swirling white vortex. The snowfall was no longer just heavy, it was surreal, as if the neighborhood had been scooped up and placed inside a snow globe that some capricious child shook with glee. Concerned, Emily wrapped herself in her thickest winter coat and ventured outside. The snow, now several feet high, muffled her steps, creating an oppressive silence broken only by the howling wind. Neighbors, faces pinched with cold and confusion, emerged from their homes, shovels in hand, attempting to clear paths, only to find them filled again in minutes. The realization that they were trapped was slow, but undeniable. Roads in and out of Willow Creek were impassable, and attempts to call for help were met with static-filled responses. It was as if the neighborhood had been cut off from the world, isolated by an unnatural, sentient storm. As night fell, the temperature dropped precipitously, and the power flickered out, plunging Willow Creek into darkness. Emily, with her nurse's training, checked on her elderly neighbors, ensuring they had enough blankets and were kept warm. But as she moved from house to house, she couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was watching, learning their behaviors, and responding with strategic ferocity. This caused Omega to retreat into her hideout, and not with her daughter. On the third day, with the storm still raging, Emily gathered a group of neighbors in the dim glow of a gas lantern. "This isn't natural," she insisted, pointing to a pattern in the snow visible from the upstairs window of her house. It was almost perfectly circular, with the neighborhood at its center. Driven by a mix of desperation and determination, Emily proposed a daring plan. They would trek to the storm's eye, the center of the circle, to find its cause, and, hopefully, a way to stop it. Equipped with snow gear and roped together for safety, the group set out into the blizzard. The wind screamed in their ears, making communication nearly impossible. They trudged through the snow, which seemed to clutch at their legs, hindering their progress. After hours of grueling effort, they reached the center. There, in the eye of the storm, was an unexpected sight. A small, unassuming research facility, branded with the logo of a well-known meteorological institute. The door was ajar, swinging in the wind. Inside, they found a scene of chaos, papers strewn about, equipment overturned, and a large, complicated device emitting a low hum at the center of the room. The device, surrounded by monitors flashing warning lights, was clearly part of an experiment gone disastrously wrong. What? Emily, with help from a neighbor who was an electrical engineer, began to assess the device. They realized it was intended to manipulate weather patterns but had malfunctioned, now intensifying the storm instead of mitigating it. With no time to lose, they worked together to shut down the experiment. Sparks flew as wires were pulled and switches thrown, the machine groaning under the strain of its own power. The boss started, as though he'd expected to find worse power. The storm didn't dissipate immediately, but as the device powered down, the winds began to lose their fury, and the snow slowed its relentless assault. By the time Emily and her group made it back to their homes, the sky was clearing, revealing the first glimpses of a starry night. The neighborhood of Willow Creek was left to reckon with the aftermath of the storm, but Emily emerged not just as a survivor, but as a hero. Her bravery and quick thinking had saved her community from what could have been an unending winter. The icy wind howled through the broken windows of the old mining town, carrying with it the whispers of a forgotten past. Sam O'Connor zipped his heavy parka tighter as he stepped out of his rented 4x4, camera in hand, ready to capture the soul of the place no one had called home for decades. The town of Cold Hollow, Alaska, had been abandoned since the late 1960s, when the last of the mines dried up and the final residents moved on in search of better prospects. What remained was a skeleton of a community, its buildings sagging under the weight of snow and time. Sam had always been drawn to places like Cold Hollow, places where history was palpable, where stories were etched into the very walls and ground. He set up his base in what appeared to have been the town hall, a relatively sturdy building with most of its structure intact. As he unpacked his equipment, he felt the first prickle of unease. The sense that, despite its emptiness, he wasn't entirely alone. Determined to delve into the town's secrets, Sam began his exploration. The old general store still had shelves lined with dust-covered goods, their labels faded but still colorful against the gray monotony of the surroundings. He filmed everything, narrating his thoughts and observations into the recorder hanging around his neck. Force for force. That's what I want. That night, as he reviewed the day's footage, he noticed something odd. A shadow that crossed the lens for a mere second, too quick to be identified. Intrigued, Sam decided it was worth further investigation. The next day, armed with more batteries and a stronger flashlight, he headed towards the mines, the heart of Cold Hollow's ghost stories. As he approached the entrance of the main shaft, his equipment began to act up. The fully charged batteries drained within minutes, and his flashlight flickered sporadically. Sam paused at the entrance of the mine, the eerie wails echoing off the walls, sending a shiver down his spine. He steadied his breath, reminding himself that he was here for a documentary, to capture evidence, not ghost stories. But as the voices grew louder, a primal part of him screamed to turn back. Ignoring his instincts, Sam ventured deeper into the mine. The narrow beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing the skeletal framework of the tunnels and the remnants of tools long abandoned. The air grew colder, and his breath came out in visible puffs, mingling with the low mists that seemed to seep from the very rock. The voices became a chorus, a cacophony of calls for help, cries of warning, and the sorrowful moaning of those long past. As he rounded a bend, the tunnel opened into a larger cavern. The remains of a collapsed section of the mine greeted him. The timbers splintered and scattered like the bones of a giant beast. It was here the voices were loudest, a symphony of despair. Among the debris, Sam spotted something unusual. A leather-bound book, remarkably preserved amid the destruction. He approached it slowly, the sense of foreboding growing with every step. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cold leather, and as he opened the book, the voices fell silent. The pages were filled with neat, precise handwriting, the entries dating back decades. It was a miner's diary, and the last entries detailed the days leading up to a catastrophic accident that had claimed many lives. The writer, a miner named Thomas, wrote of ominous signs and ill omens ignored by the mining company, eager to capitalize on the gold veins. As Sam read, the weight of the tragedy sunk in. These weren't just voices. They were the echoes of those who had died here, trapped and forgotten. He felt a deep obligation to tell their story, to bring their voices to light. With a renewed sense of purpose, he set up his camera to film the diary and the surrounding ruins, the raw. But as he spoke into the camera, recounting the diary's tales and the voices he had heard, a new voice joined the chorus, an audible, clear voice that made Sam's blood run cold. It was different, commanding attention. It was Thomas, the miner who had penned the diary, speaking directly to him. "You who walk where we once toiled, bear witness to our plight," the voice echoed around the cavern. "Tell our stories, for they are all we have left. There maketh our hell, and not our hell." Sam nodded silently, understanding the weight of the task bestowed upon him. He packed the diary carefully, its pages a precious cargo. As he made his way back through the tunnels, the voices seemed to follow him, no longer just cries and whispers, but words of gratitude. Emerging into the blizzard that had once more enveloped the town, Sam felt a strange peace. The storm that had seemed so threatening before now felt like a veil, shielding him and his ghostly companions from the rest of the world. Back in the safety of his makeshift base, Sam reviewed the footage and audio recordings. The evidence was undeniable, the voices clear. This was more than he had ever hoped to capture. In the days that followed, as the storm cleared and Sam prepared to leave Cold Hollow, he knew his film would change the narrative of the town forever. People would come seeking the ghosts of Cold Hollow, drawn by the story of tragedy and unresolved spirits. But for Sam, it wasn't about the thrill or the fame. It was about justice for the forgotten, a promise to keep to those who had spoken to him from beyond the grave. As he drove away, the town shrinking in his rearview mirror, the voices faded, but their message remained strong in his mind, a constant reminder of the truth he had to share with the world. Alex Monroe had been the lead ski instructor at the Cedar Ridge Lodge for 5 seasons now, but he'd never seen the weather turn foul as quickly as it did that fateful week. The lodge, nestled in the heart of the Rocky Mountains, was preparing for the influx of guests coming for the renowned Winterfest. The annual event was a highlight for ski enthusiasts, promising a week of untouched powder, competitive races, and cozy evenings by roaring fires. As Alex checked the equipment in the main ski hut, he felt the first gust of wind, stronger than usual, slap against the wooden walls. He peered outside, noting the dark clouds gathering with unnatural speed. Pulling his phone from his pocket, he checked the weather app. No signal. With a frown, he decided to walk over to the main lodge to catch the weather forecast on the satellite television. Inside, the warmth and buzz of arriving guests contrasted sharply with the chill that clung to his skin. People laughed, dragging their luggage and discussing their excitement about the slopes. Alex made his way to the bar, where a small TV showed the local news channel. The meteorologist was almost animated in his urgency, talking about a sudden blizzard warning. The storm, he said, was moving faster than predicted, and it was advised that everyone in the high mountain regions prepare for significant snowfall and brutal winds. Returning to the ski hut, Alex decided to secure the equipment. He knew the old structures around the lodge weren't built to withstand what was coming. As he worked, the wind began to howl, a sound that seemed almost like voices, whispering. He shook his head, attributing the noise to his imagination, a trick of the wind through the trees. That night, the blizzard hit with a vengeance. Snow fell in thick sheets, visibility reduced to zero. The wind's whispers grew louder, more insistent. Lying in his small room above the ski hut, Alex couldn't sleep. The whispers seemed to call his name, beckoning him. In the morning, the lodge was a different world. Snow had piled up against windows and doors, and the electricity was out. The guests were anxious but safe, gathered in the main hall where the lodge's old generators provided some power and heat. Alex, coffee in hand, tried to reassure everyone, but his own mind was troubled. As he helped to clear a path from the main lodge to the ski hut, he noticed peculiar shadows in the snow. Not just the random shapes of drifts, but what seemed like impressions of figures. Human shapes that vanished when looked at directly. The guests joked about snow ghosts, but Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. The storm didn't let up. Days passed, with the lodge cut off from the outside world, the phone lines down, and satellite signals lost. The guests grew restless, and so did Alex. The whispers were now a constant background noise, growing louder whenever he was alone. Determined to find the source, Alex ventured out into the storm, following the voices that no one else seemed to hear. He stumbled upon a set of old stone markers half buried in the snow, markers he'd never seen before on any map of the lodge's grounds. They were arranged in a circle, and as he approached, the wind seemed to howl in protest. The slimy curtain, the last of the torches, surrounded them. The moon seemed to howl and protest. The voices became clearer, chanting in a language he couldn't understand. Fear gripped him, but so did an insatiable curiosity. He began to dig around the markers, uncovering old, frozen artifacts, remnants of a forgotten time. As Alex unearthed more from the snow, the storm seemed to react. The wind whipped furiously, as if trying to drive him away. But the voices guided him, soothing now, promising answers. He discovered an old journal, sealed in a waterproof container. It belonged to a founder of the lodge, who wrote of local legends, stories of spirits trapped in the mountain, disturbed by the living. Follow me. Alex, driven by a need to understand, spent hours reading by the light of a flickering lantern. The founder had tried to appease the spirits with offerings, but something had gone wrong. A ritual interrupted, a circle broken. Alex, realizing the storm itself might be a manifestation of these disturbed spirits, Alex knew he had to complete what was started. With the help of a few brave guests, he set out to restore the circle of stones, to finish the ritual according to the journal's instructions. As they placed the last artifact back into the circle, the storm's intensity reached a peak. Then, suddenly, silence. The snow stopped falling, the wind ceased, and the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. The lodge was saved, and the guests hailed Alex as a hero. But he kept the journal and its secrets, knowing some truths were better left hidden. He would guard the mountain's mysteries, wary of the whispers returning.